What's this phone number you talk of? I'm supposed to give You're reading my lines, man. You're a line hog. You're like one of those actors that steals other people's lines and he's reading it in the script.
I know. I did that on purpose.
Welcome to iAccessVO with Brian Fischler and Ed Plumacher. Making it happen with VoiceOver accessibility. And now, here's Brian and Ed.
We know it's been a while, but welcome back to yet another episode of iAccessVO. Ed, I gotta tell you, life happens, man. Life happens.
Yeah, Brian, it does. The best laid plans of mice and men. I mean, we do try to be consistent. We do try to produce good content, and sometimes the schedules just don't work out with life. We all have families and we all have things we have to deal with, and it's just you, me, and really Patrick. So if something goes wrong or happens with one of us with our schedules, the show may get delayed.
And we talked before the show, and you really didn't want to tell the listeners what had happened, but I think I'm going to tell them, Ed. I think it's good to be honest with the listeners and let them know that Ed was abducted by aliens, and we had to wait for them to return him to Earth, and they were finally good enough. They said, no thanks, we have not found intelligent life in Ed, and he's back here on Earth, and we're back recording and back to our regular schedule.
Yep, I'm so glad I was able to dumb it down. I guess my being on the podcast gave me the experience to do that.
Fortunately, Ed, when he was abducted by aliens, he took his Echo with him, and I was able to contact him with this new Wi-Fi calling feature, which we briefly discussed on the last show. Ed, how you liking that new call-in feature?
Brian, I think this is great. I know when I had discussed having bought the Echo from my parents, this was one of the things I was hoping would be coming. And then a couple of episodes ago, it was announced that it was in the works, and it did come out. And I got to tell you, here, I live in New York. My parents live in Las Vegas. I'd gotten the Echo because of my mom's Alzheimer's and everything, hoping it would make life a little easier for her and my dad. And I was actually able to set up their Echo device in Las Vegas with this call feature right here from my home. So I was able to log them in using the app. I'm not going to say the name, so I'm going to set up all the devices, Alexa.
Unlike I spell it in our show notes.
Yes, but I was able to set it up, and we were able to go back and forth calling. And luckily, my mom is remembering the key word because we've been drilling it into her for a few months now. So she's able to activate the system and easily call me. My sister doesn't have a Dot or an Echo yet, but she's going to download and put the app on her phone, which will allow her to have access that way as well.
I know it's great that people that do not have the device can simply put the app on their phone, and it works great. A couple things I was very impressed with. First off, the fact that they came out with the 2.0 Echo, I guess, the show with the video screen, and the fact that the voice calling works on the first generation is great, because that was my one fear, that this voice calling would only work on the new device, and that's how they'd get you to buy the new device. So kudos to Amazon for making this work on all Echo devices, the Dot, everything you got there. And the simplicity of setting it up, even as a VoiceOver user, the Amazon Echo A app doesn't exactly always work great with VoiceOver, but it seems to be getting better. They seem to be making some improvements. I was able to set this up in less than 10 minutes. And one thing I did notice that's funny is I'm seeing almost all the contacts we've had here on the show that are blind, visually impaired, because they're in my contacts, have Echo devices.
Wow, it's almost like you have friends now.
I thought that's why we started the show, so Mom wouldn't have to keep paying for you to be my friend.
That's true. That's true. I will say, though, the one thing I did like about the app, and they did make some major corrections to it. I used to struggle with the menu button and getting in the menu and being able to get out, and it's really fluid, and it's working very well now. So I'm very happy. Kudos to Amazon in this area. They've done a good job. And also, I have to say that not just Amazon, but a lot of these developers and manufacturers today, they're building this hardware and they're able to make these firmware upgrades on legacy devices. So you're not forced to run out every 6 months or 12 months to buy new hardware to be able to take advantage of new features. And I think that's awesome.
I'm still using my original Amazon Echo from 1974.
Yeah, when you go, Amazon, that's your Echo.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's the rainforest. So, yeah. But and we got to mention Amazon again because I know they came out with the new closet device, which I believe is called the Amazon Look. I don't think the sighted community is going to be into this, but for a blind person that works, sometimes you need a little help with the style assistance, and I don't know how this device works, but it sounds pretty cool that you can just snap a photo. But one thing that's interesting, the Amazon app now can offer style selections as well, Ed.
That's great. So do you call the app a closet device too? Because then you have to come out of the closet to use it.
Yeah, I don't want to go there, but not that there's anything wrong with it. But no, the great thing, I did look at this a little in the app and yesterday, but I was being kept in sweatpants yesterday, and I did notice that the app says take a photo of you in 2 different outfits, and we will then compare and tell you which one you look better in. And I just did not want to take a photo of me laying around in sweatpants, so I didn't test it out.
It wasn't going to play I'm too sexy for myself for you?
I was afraid I was going to take a picture and then it was going to suggest like Nutrisystem or something instead of clothing. Direct me to all the diet sites out there on the web.
Hey man, we could always have Maria Osmond on as a guest for Nutrisystem.
Yeah. Or I'd take a picture to direct me immediately to a pizza website because it can tell from looking at me how much I enjoy pizza. No, but I seriously think this is great. That app it's going to do more than just buying things. I mean, they've really expanded the Amazon app, and it's fully accessible. The one thing I don't understand, by the way, this from what I understand, this new feature where you can take a photo of your outfit only works for Amazon Prime members. By the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's one thing I believe I read. Only works for Amazon Prime members. Now, Ed, are you an Amazon Prime member?
Of course.
In the app, I have these dots that are like stuff I've bought before. Do you have any clue what the heck they are? They're called Amazon dots. I have no idea what these are.
Well, you bought one dot that I noticed that you have.
Not that kind of dot. They just say like dot or something, and it's like it's got Nash's dog food and other stuff. And I haven't figured out what these are. If you look in the app, you'll see them.
I'll have to take a look. I'll see if I can figure it out using low vision or something like that. So all it says is ... or something.
No, it says dot, and it's like this is it has like the product's name and everything. You have to check it out. But if anybody uses the app out there and understands what these dot things are, I'm wondering if it's like something it almost seems like it's you just press it and it automatically orders what you want, which I don't want to accidentally do that, you know.
Yeah, I can get that. You'll make sure Nash doesn't step on your phone, because if he figures that out, you'll have 200 pounds of dog food coming in weekly.
Back up the dump truck, yeah. But as much as I love Amazon, Ed, the one thing I just don't have any interest in, which I don't know, maybe it could be financial constraints or lack of vision, is the new. What's the newest one? The Amazon Look.
No, the Look was what we just spoke about.
Okay,
the Schell. The Amazon.
Pardon me. The Schell.
Yeah, the Echo Show or whatever it is. Yeah. I I was in this corner about not thinking it was that pertinent, and then I've been doing some reading on it and everything else, and I can see it. It has what they're calling drop-ins. So if you connect with family and friends, you could just like drop in on mom, and all of a sudden, you'd be present and hearing and seeing and vice versa on it. So, and I've read it in the area of like you can monitor or help elderly parents and things like that. So, I think that there is a need for this. I mean, it may be something that's very useful. I mean, it might be something I may want to upgrade my parents to.
This drop-in thing scares the bejesus out of me. Not because I'm a privacy concerned guy, but I like to walk around naked a lot.
Well, sometimes, Brian, it pays to be blind.
Yeah. I'm kidding. I don't walk around naked a lot, but it's funny. We Ed and I joke a lot behind the scenes about some blind people are so paranoid. With these devices always. Nobody cares about you, but this is one thing where it's a little awkward. This drop-in thing does freak me out a little because you're sitting there, doing something, and all of a sudden they can see what you're doing, and that's a little weird.
Yeah, it's very George Jetson and Mr. Spacely kind of thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got more of a Mr. Spacely haircut going these days. That was not a good look.
It suits you well, my friend.
Oh, but yeah, no. So this is just one of those devices that did not tickle my fancy. I've been trying to work in that phrase to the podcast for months.
Well, some of this stuff is controversial, so it'd be nice. I'd like maybe our listeners to, once they contact us and let us know what their thoughts are. I mean, what do you think of the new Echo Show? And are you a Dot user? Do you use the Amazon Look? And give us your opinion. So they can hit us up either on Twitter at iAccessVO, and they can also get us on Facebook at iAccessVO as well. Contact us on email at iAccessVO@gmail.com, or they can call us in. Brian, you want to give the phone number?
What's this phone number you talk of? I'm supposed to give You're reading my lines, man. You're a line hog. You're like one of those actors that steals other people's lines, and he's reading it in the script.
I know. I did that on purpose. So, but if they want to call in, they can call us at 732-660-8641.
And if you know what these buttons are in that Amazon app that I was describing, hit us up and let us know what they are.
We learn a lot from our listeners, and we learn a lot from our guests. And, we have a guest coming on now who I think is full of incredible information. So why don't you tell our listeners about what we have here? Yeah,
it's a topic that the listeners know I love. Described video as well as accessible set-top boxes. I'm really looking forward to bringing in a guest who's not only a lawyer, but a visually impaired lawyer. And he's got a great name, Ed. Will Schell from the FCC. Really cool name.
Awesome. Let's bring him on and find out what's happening in the world of audio description with someone from the FCC.
Let's go. Now we'd like to welcome into the show our second lawyer to ever be on the show, but our first government employee, Will Schell of the FCC. How you doing today, Will?
Good. I'm so happy to be on the show. You guys are really doing a great job, and I've enjoyed a lot of the podcasts.
Oh, thanks, Will. It's good to have you on iAccessVO. Thanks for joining us.
And it's good for the FCC to be a fan rather than to be an enemy. But, Will, we've established you work at the FCC, so what does an attorney at the FCC do?
Well, in particular, I don't know what any of the other attorneys do. FCC is filled with attorneys. My role in particular is to help enforce and promulgate the disability rights office's rules, and to help people with disabilities gain access to FCC covered issues. I have been working a lot in the blind and visually impaired space. I've only been there for 5 months now, so I guess I haven't been working in there for very long. But as a person with a visual impairment, I think reaching out to the blind community in particular, and getting them the information that the FCC has about accessibility for blindness-related issues and how radio and video and telephone telecommunication services can be accessible has kind of been what I've been working on, at least for the last 5 months.
Well, let me ask you this, Will. So as someone who is blind visually impaired, obviously you're an attorney, which meant, bachelor's degree, going to law school, and now working here at the FCC as an attorney. Assistive technology has had to have played a huge role in your education and now in your daily workflow. So can you give us, our listeners, just an idea of what type of assistive technology you utilize at the FCC and at school?
So back when I was in college, I was bringing a laptop to class to take notes, and I was making everything magnified, large print, and that way, I could utilize the information, utilize my own notes. So one of the major problems that I think a lot of people have is taking notes and you can't make heads or tails of it. Now I use, high contrast. I use a lot of Zoom text, primarily because the government because of the government, mostly. It's a Windows world that I'm living in. So I don't have a Mac laptop or anything cool like that. But the Windows has come a long ways. So primarily I just use magnification, Zoom text, but Zoom text has built in recently a lot of screen reading technology, which I've been using for long form reading and things like that.
So you use Zoom text with speech at times to help alleviate a lot of the fatigue that may set on from having to read a lot of material.
Exactly.
And you'll have to walk down there to Pennsylvania Avenue to talk to the man in that White House to maybe get you to use a Mac and come over and be with the cool kids.
We'll see. Maybe someday the government will hand someone a Macintosh, but I don't believe they've done that anywhere.
No. They're still using computers that are fairly old. And I remember we mentioned on one podcast that we had discovered that the nuclear weapons were still controlled by a floppy disk, which I guess is a good thing because you can't hack it. So, but no, now we have to get into a hard-hitting question here on iAccessVO. Ed and I are both fans of described video. I watch if there is a described video track provided from a network, I will watch it. And this was an act, from my understanding, that was passed in 2010, as I believe it was part of the 21st Century Communications Act. So we're talking 7 years ago. And at the time, the act required the networks to provide 50 hours a quarter of described video in primetime or children's television, which roughly works out to only about 4 hours a week, which is pretty pathetic. Any movement on this? Or I know there's been a new administration that came in January. Any words about getting this 4 hours a week bumped up a little higher?
Right. So you nailed it. Just in case anyone wants to kind of dig into the deeper weeds on what's available now for video description. So the FCC let me just, as a side note, the FCC has decided to call described video description. So I will just kind of constantly just keep calling it video description. But their video description rules require, just as you said, the top 4 broadcast networks, which is ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC, in the top 60 TV markets. So already we're starting to get a little bit granular. And then also the top 5 non-broadcast networks, which are the Disney Channel and History Channel, TBS, TNT, and USA. Those are the only stations that are required under our rules to provide, just as you said, 4 hours per week of video described primetime or children's programming. So it's not a ton, but most networks are providing more than the 4 hours.
Let me comment there. Fox is doing a phenomenal job USA, all of their original programming has described video. TBS seems to be doing a great job. The ones that are failing and really just looks like they're trying to meet the minimum are CBS and NBC. I've been very disappointed with them. And it's hilarious because the shows they choose to do described video with, a lot of times are sitcoms that don't need it, yet their action, fast-paced shows have no described video. So it's really bizarre, the shows that they do choose to provide some described video to.
Yeah, and I don't want to lose track of your ultimate question about is this going to expand, or is there going to be any movement on this? But I just want to say I think that a lot of companies don't realize that people want to watch described video. I also think that in the state that we're in right now, that a lot of sighted people don't realize that they would like or enjoy described video. So I think there's a lot of kind of getting the word out that this is not just for blind and visually impaired people. If we could get more kind of uptake or on this, I think a lot of the networks would be competing for this. I think Netflix has really kind of brought to the forefront. That might have been the first time people who aren't blind or visually impaired might have known that such a thing as described video.
Yeah, I was involved with the movement with Netflix, a couple of those groups. I was personally involved with helping, nudge Netflix, because it wasn't until the blindness community threatened Netflix with a couple of lawsuits that they took things seriously. But Netflix has gone above and beyond, because not only are all of their original programming shows done with described video now, they're done quality. There's good described video and there's bad described video. For example, whoever does the described video for ABC sitcoms should be shot and put out of their misery, because it's so awful. But it really is an art form. It really is an art form. And 20 years from now, I can see the Academy Awards, because we know how Hollywood loves to give awards to itself, having a best describer video category at the Academy Awards. It wouldn't surprise me 20 years from now if we had that as a category.
It would be great, because I know that I have my favorites when there's a particular describer or even just a particular voice, and it's a real nuance where they're not interfering with the movie. It's not actually just the best voice; it's the best voice that doesn't interfere.
We had our first celebrity do described video for 24 Legacy. I just happened to notice it was, and of course now I'm going to blank on her name. Ed, do you remember the actress?
Adrienne Barbeau.
Yeah, Adrienne Barbeau, who Will's probably too young to know who she was, but she was a great actress in some cult classics in the 80s and everything. I think she was actually married to the director John Carpenter at one time, who did Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China. So it was great to have a familiar voice doing described video for 24 Legacy, which I thought they did a great job on.
I think that, Will, the one thing that I have been disappointed most about the 21st Century Act is in the cable providers themselves. I mean, it was very encouraging when we had Comcast come out with their described video platform about 2.5 years ago, and it looked like they were setting the path and the trend for how things were and how things were going to go. And it seems like a lot of these other cable providers have just dropped the ball, like Spectrum and Cablevision here in the Northeast.
Well, let me address that. So I think what you're asking about is, when are the cable and satellite companies going to make really good, high quality, accessible set-top boxes? And I have a lot to say about all of that, but I'm going to lose Brian's question, which is described video ever going to expand? And so just the short history with the expansion of described video is that on April 1st of 2016, the FCC issued a notice of proposed rulemaking. This is, part of the process for making regulations. Government entities send out these NPRMs, and the public comments on them. And the public comment, we received back the public comment, and then it was the expansion of video description was scheduled for a vote by the commission on November 17th. The expansion, if it passed, would have increased the amount of video description from 50 hours per quarter to 87.5 hours per quarter, which I think only raises it up to about 7 hours per week. It's about 7 hours per week. It also would have increased the number of TV networks that would have had to have provided video description. It would have increased it from the top 4 broadcast networks to the top 5 broadcast networks, and then it would have expanded it to the top 10 non-broadcast networks. So in some ways it would have been a small amount more, but it would have also it would have nearly doubled, at least on the cable side, the amount of networks that had to provide this. But as you mentioned, this, along with everything else that was scheduled, was taken off of about I think it was just a few hours before they were going to vote. The commission, the incoming administration asked that the commission take no further action on regulations and not to pass anything. And this is actually very routine.
I did read that. Yes, I had read that.
President Obama did the same thing when he was coming into office. And so as of right now, this regulation is not dead. It has not been put on a schedule for a vote yet, but it is. There's a big difference between being dead and just, I don't know, being on a shelf, waiting to be put on a schedule. So that's still total possibility. It may change. They may send out another notice asking for public comment. I don't have any information beyond it hasn't been rescheduled for a vote.
Wow, and it's amazing anything ever gets done in Washington.
Yeah, so then now going back then to the set-top boxes, and I think one of the big issues, and Brian and I have discussed this, is that there's no penalty, there's no bite or teeth in this act. I mean, it's like, from what I've read, they just have to show that they've made some effort. Is that true?
Well, I don't think that they have to. No, I don't think that that's totally true. So one thing that you can do as of December 20th, 2016, so just a few months ago, all the cable and satellite companies now have to provide accessible set-top boxes. There's specific things that they have to make accessible, and those companies right now, for the most part, are in a mad dash to make them accessible. So let me be more specific. The top 14 cable and satellite companies. These are the cable and satellite companies that you've all heard of. It covers almost everybody. They all have to make accessible set-top boxes now. By December 20th, 2018, all the cable and satellite companies have to provide accessible set-top boxes. So they have to provide accessible set-top boxes at no additional charge. They have to make it generally easy to get, which would be you get them in roughly the same manner that a sighted person would get a set-top box. It can't be particularly more cumbersome to get them.
I don't know if you've heard about Cablevision and Spectrum, but they seem to have missed this whole memo.
So I have it. So I've been talking for the last 5 months. All I have been doing virtually is talking to people who are filing complaints with my office saying, I don't have an accessible set-top box, and when I call the customer service, they don't know what I'm talking about. The saddest is that every time, at least in the beginning here, right, this first 5 months, whenever people seem to call the customer service line and say, I want my accessible set-top box, the FCC says I am supposed to have one now. They always try to help people turn on and off the secondary audio channel in order to listen to described video. But these accessible set-top boxes they're coming. So I don't want to speak for any particular company. So I'll be vague. And I also don't want to kind of, I don't want to give away kind of any particular, person or situation. But the these companies that have done things I think that you are talking about, which is attach a laptop to your set-top box and then give you an Android tablet in order to control the the thing, it's a nightmare. It's a total nightmare. And as far as I know, every company that tried that has abandoned that and is in the process of implementing something that makes a lot more sense. All of these companies are supposed to have a website as well, an accessible website that lists who they can speak to find out more information, and then also that person is also supposed to be able to explain how to get one of these devices and how to use the accessible functions on these devices. So as people file complaints with our office and we begin kind of talking to the companies about the complaints, we're finding these situations where it's just an unacceptable situation to have a laptop connected to this device. Some of the things that I've heard are so bonkers where the entirety of the sound now comes out of the laptop, and that you can't get the sound back into your surround sound speakers and things like that.
Will, I've noticed USA Network actually does a phenomenal job with their description, but the volume of the described video, the track is so low that you've got to raise the volume on your TV so much that if your screen reader starts talking, you end up getting complaints from your neighbors. So that's hopefully something these cable companies will be able to, get that secondary audio track, maybe in Dolby Digital or something. That's something that we'll hopefully see improved. But it's just fascinating how some of these companies, going back to the boxes, they get it, and we've had conversations about the dongles, and it's mind-blowing what they were thinking of when they put some of these packages together.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been hearing a lot about people who are getting their hands on these accessible set-top boxes, and I should also just mention all of the other, forget the cable and satellite companies, our rules for accessible user interfaces cover all sorts of things that play video programming over the internet. And so our accessibility requirements go towards, Rokus and Apple TVs, and also computers, smart TVs are covered. And then also a whole bunch of stuff that you would never expect, like the user interface has to be accessible for the rear seat headrests in cars, the entertainment systems in the headrests in cars. If your smart refrigerator plays video programming, it has to have an accessible user interface for that video programming.
That's fantastic, and we've heard the Roku that. I was just listening to somebody talk about that, and I guess they went the cheapest way possible, because I heard the voice sounds like a screen reader from the 1960s, and so it's interesting how some companies, TiVo, I can't say enough about them, how they got it. The first screen reader they released has been absolutely fantastic. It needs some minor adjustments, but that's been fantastic. And then you get other companies that I guess it really is. It depends on the company. And you mentioned about this interfaces and everything, if they play any kind of video. So does the FCC have any kind of oversight over Amazon and them releasing described video, or iTunes and them coming out with described video tracks?
So we don't have any regulations or rules around internet video programming and described video yet. There's a rule out right now, or I'm sorry, not a rule out. There's a notice of proposed rulemaking that went out for public comment, that I believe the public comment is over, and in the next, government time, in the next while.
What's that? 100 years of government time? Okay.
It's somewhere between tomorrow and 20 years from now. The rule may redefine what a multi-channel video programming service is. which is all part of the regulations and everything. But ultimately, they might count companies that are providing things like Netflix and things like Amazon and things like these new internet-based cable subscription services. They might include them into rules for accessibility as well. But let me just say that all of these companies, right? All of the companies that are doing things like Amazon Fire Stick. I have not tried this personally myself, but it's my understanding that the latest Amazon Fire Stick is accessible out of the box, that you can set it up yourself totally blind, that you can plug it in and it will say, do you want to use the voice, the screen reader to set this up? And you say, yeah, and then you're just off to the races.
Yeah, I've heard good things from Amazon, and through an acquaintance who's been working with Amazon, I heard they've got some exciting things on the horizon coming up. And Ed, are you using the Amazon Fire Stick?
No, I don't use the Amazon Fire Stick. I use the Chromecast, and I use the Apple TV, the third generation version. But we've also heard good things about Roku actually starting to making some movement in this area too. So I think that it is happening. It's probably slower than we would like as consumers. But my initial concern was, what happens to these companies if they don't comply, if they don't meet deadlines? Are there any penalties involved in this?
So the penalties really, the penalties are hard to get to, because most of the time, if you file a complaint with the FCC, we will reach out to the device manufacturer or the cable provider, and we'll say to them, hey, here's a complaint. This complaint seems to be talking about the rules right here. And 99% of the time, they fix the problem. So let me just say to everyone, I'm going to provide, the contact information for the Disability Rights Office. You can contact our office and file a complaint if you think that something is out of compliance. Things like verbosity rate and adjusting the volume of the screen reader aren't in our rules yet. So our rules are really just minimally accessible. So, you have to have some way of accessing the settings and menus and channel selection and start, stop, and fast forward. But, as these companies develop these things, I think the second generation, right, of these devices is really going to be top quality. And I think it's going to put a lot more pressure on the cable and satellite companies if your Apple TV can adjust the volume or increase the verbosity rate, or even change the voice. Change the voice to one that you may own your own voice you want to put on there. I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on these cable companies.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Apple TV, because I have the fourth generation Apple TV, and I consider it one of the worst products as far as accessibility that I've ever bought. Not because of Apple. When I had the third generation Apple TV, which was fantastic, Ed still has it, and Apple released all the apps on the third generation Apple TV, so they were all very accessible. With the fourth gen Apple TV, everything is now about the company releasing the apps. And for example, ABC, if you're blind, you could forget about using the ABC app because nothing's titled in the app. Everything just reads untitled, untitled, untitled. So as they've developed the Apple TV further and further, unfortunately, accessibility has gotten worse and worse, and I've gotten to the point where I only really use it for Netflix because 60% of the apps don't work with VoiceOver, which I know is not an FCC issue, but I thought I'd just mention that as I go on my little tangents here.
No, and it's a really good point, because I should really mention that just because the removable media player is accessible doesn't mean that the apps on it are, and our rules only extend to the apps that they direct you to download and play when you bought it. So if Apple had a video, well, I'm sure they do. If Apple's video programming app would very likely be required under our rules to be accessible, but the super far out there, obscure app that you download to play all the Japanese anime.
Yeah. Well, no, this isn't even obscure. This is okay. For example, ABC. On the it's really head scratching what's going on at ABC. For example, the iPhone app does a phenomenal job, as they are the only network app that pushes through the described video track if you play a show from ABC on your iPhone and it has described video. Yet the ABC app on the Apple TV is completely unusable because nothing's labeled. So obviously, this is an internal issue with ABC. There's something where all parts of the company are not communicating well, because they can't get it in one area and just be completely clueless in the other. So,
well, you raised something that I really wanted to mention, which is that we do have a new implementation date coming out very soon for situations for just what you described, which is that on July 10th, 2017, all of the cable. This is actually a little bit of a nuanced explanation, because I don't want to give anyone false hope. But on July 10th, 2017, cable and satellite companies, they will have to start passing through the secondary audio channel to devices that are able to play linear programming that are accessed on a second screen, which is tablets and smartphones, so long as it's over the network that is provided by the cable or satellite company. So to kind of unpack that a little bit, it's linear programming, which is just generalized pre-scheduled TV, right? So it's not just the sudden outbreak of live coverage. They wouldn't have to provide the secondary audio channel for that. And then also it's networks, so it's cable and satellite companies providing this linear programming over their own network. So you've got to be, if we take Comcast, it would have to be on Comcast network, and that they are telling you that you should be watching this linear programming. That situation, the secondary audio channel should be will be required to be sent through the second screen device. That rule is specifically for emergency information. So the secondary audio track not only provides video description, but it also provides a readout of emergency information.
So this is separate from the SAP channel where you would get Spanish language or something like that. So this is a secondary track in addition to that.
No, it's the same one. It's the same track.
Okay, so what is to determine whether you get Spanish as a second language or you get the described video?
So if they are providing the text on the primary audio track in English, then they will have to provide it in English on the secondary audio track, but they'll have to read it out loud. So, for example, it's my understanding, and I may have to, this is a really good question, but it's my understanding that if you are listening to the secondary audio channel and it's being provided to you in Spanish, but on the primary audio channel, there is an English language scroll providing emergency information, my understanding is that the secondary audio track should read that out in English.
So if there's English closed captioning, I would be entitled to have English description?
It's slightly different than closed captioning, but the scroll and the emergency information aren't part of the closed captioning system. But yes.
Well, I think I can explain a little further how it works, because I've noticed this. I believe if your television is, you set it up for language nowadays and it says English, and there's a described video track, that track is going to play in English. Now, I have hit the described video button, which TiVo has a dedicated button for, and sometimes there's been no described video track, and the show starts playing in Spanish. And then I hit the button again, and it goes back to playing English. So what I understand is, say you have your television set to Spanish, and you're watching all your shows in Spanish, if there's a described video track and you hit the described video button, you would then get that described video track in Spanish as well. So I believe it'll follow the language that, yeah.
That's if it's created in Spanish, which is tough enough to get it done in English. How much of that's being done in Spanish?
I think you're going into a whole other topic here. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to our Spanish blind friends speaking. Hey, that's something I think we're biting off a little too much there.
Well, because this is the argument I heard when I was at a conference recently, and we had the head of accessibility at Comcast speaking, and it's almost like this whole video description thing is forced into being shared with the second language channel. So it's it's either a give and take, and I don't understand why a tertiary channel can't be created with the technology that exists today. I mean, you're trying to pump something out that's new and cutting edge, yet you're willing to deal with like late 1980s technology. I don't understand it.
Well, I couldn't agree more. It is confusing to users all over the place. I mean, it's, in particular, sometimes the secondary audio channel is blank. It's just, there's no sound on it. And people may not even know if they're on a station. If you have the secondary audio channel on and you change channels, it could be dead silence. Sometimes it's a repeat of the primary audio channel. Sometimes, like you said, it's Spanish or another foreign language. And then sometimes it's video described video. Mm-hmm. It is existing right now in a pretty strange universe. I think that part of the argument, if the industry was going to make an argument right now, it would be that not a lot of people are listening to the secondary audio channel. And I think the reverse argument of that is no one can really get to it. No one knows how to get to it unless they have something like the TiVo, like you described, like
a button, a dedicated button.
A dedicated button. And let me just mention, our rules actually talk about that situation in particular. So I'll describe very quickly the rules about when a button needs to exist. Now, not for the cable and satellite companies. I'm going to set them aside for right now. But for everything else, Amazon Fire Sticks, your smart TV, if it can play video, all the other devices, smart TVs and computers and cell phones, anything that can play video programming, they have to have a mechanism. This is the exact words. It's my favorite line from the whole regulation. A mechanism that is reasonably comparable to a button, key, or icon. I love this. There's actually a lot of interesting reasons why it's, why it sounds so ridiculous. But a mechanism that's reasonably comparable to a button, key, or icon. Some of these newer devices only have 5 buttons on the remote. And so they're going to kind of have to come up with a way of activating, a simple and easy way of activating the secondary audio channel. That's all part of our rules right now. As of December 20th, 2016, all of these other devices, now I'm still putting aside cable and satellite companies, but all of these other devices that people access video programming over the internet, they have to have a mechanism comparable to a button, key, or icon. Here's a couple of things that are that we know about this mechanism. It doesn't have to be just one single step. We know that it's not reasonable if a user has to turn the device off and then back on in order to activate it. That was specifically mentioned because back in the early days, I understand that in order to activate closed captioning, you used to have to actually turn the device off.
Yeah, I think I can simplify this. I see where you're going with this. I think for devices, for example, the Apple TV 4th generation has maybe only 5 or 6 buttons on it. I could see, to get the described video track playing, them going with hit the home button with the volume up and something like that, and then described video will start playing. So I think it'll be a combination of buttons or a 1, 2, 3, do this, that. But, that's, I think, the way with remotes with limited buttons will probably be going.
That's right. And I've seen demonstrations at the FCC of turning on the secondary audio channel, very similar to what you just described.
Well, hey, at least it's happening now. Now, I know we've discussed a few things coming up in July, as far as in 2018. Anything else on the agenda at the FCC that you think the blindness community might be getting excited about?
Not off the top of my head. I'm sure there are, things that the blind community is interested in, but I don't have, a specific rule pointed directly towards the blind and visually impaired community like these rules are. The accessible user interface is specifically for blind and visually impaired people. But because this rule is so new, and because a lot of people don't know about it, and they don't know that they're supposed to have a simple and easy way to access a secondary audio channel, receiving complaints right now at the FCC's Disability Rights Office is the way that we kind of get the word out. And it is the way that we put pressure on these companies to make the changes to make these things more accessible. And, Ed, I wanted to mention, after the complaint, you had asked about what's the real enforcement mechanism? What's the consequences of not having this stuff? Well, a lot of these companies don't want the public shame of having to kind of answer the blind community for not having an accessible user interface or a mechanism for turning on and off the secondary audio channel. And if they get enough of these complaints, they'll be able to kind of turn their head and realize that this is not a small issue. If the complaint doesn't get resolved, the complaint will eventually move up to the Enforcement Bureau of the FCC, which none of these companies want to deal with. The Enforcement Bureau can take out massive fines against these companies.
That's they're known also as the Janet Jackson office, right?
I'm still too new to know what they're called.
I believe it's in the Janet Jackson room at the FCC.
Yeah, well, I think it's great. This has been a lot of very informative information, Will. But most importantly, I think what I've come away with today is that we do have a voice, and by going through your office, we have the ability to file complaints. And I think the more people in the community that will take the time and contact your office to let them know that they're dissatisfied, let them know they're not being taken care of by their cable providers, or that they're not happy with their television content, that is our power right now, and that's something that they should be doing. So if you can, you mentioned you would give out that information. So why don't you give out the contact information so that people can do just that? Absolutely.
The contact information for the FCC's Disability Rights Office is by telephone 202-418-2517, or you can email us at dro@fcc.gov.
Wow, I like that email address. It's nice and short.
Thanks. And we also have direct video phones. So if any users use sign language, they can call us directly. Or if anyone wants to use TTY, we, of course, have a dedicated TTY line. But it's easy to find. Also, you can file complaints directly online. I have heard that sometimes it is difficult, although using the screen reader, although it is possible. And we're still kind of looking into how come it's definitely possible but difficult. So if you want to give it a try, you can go on to fcc.gov/disability, and you will be engulfed in a world of disability rights rules.
I have read that site a little until my brain explodes. And, it's funny, though, you mentioned, the site being difficult. I'm a Verizon VoiceOver customer, and Ed has to listen to me moan and complain once a month that every time I go to pay my bill, it's funny. Verizon VoiceOver supposedly did a great job with their screen reader and cable box. They still have a CAPTCHA with no audio. There's no way for a blind person to pay their bill through Verizon VoiceOver's website or the app. And I've spoken with them countless times and got it all the way up to engineering, but they still have no way for a blind person to pay their bill online. And then when you want to pay it over the phone, they want to charge you $5, which I know that's a whole other issue that's supposedly going before the Supreme Court right now.
Well, and let me just say, those are all rules right in our wheelhouse. We deal with those types of situations all the time, and we love them because those are the issues that we can just reach out to Verizon and say, this is a major problem, So billing, accessible billing, these are all things that are supposed to exist within the framework of our rules. If you want to find out more, call us at 202-418-2517.
Yeah, I guess there's my problem. I've never filed a complaint, so I guess I know what I'm doing this week.
Yeah, Brian, putting something out on Twitter is not filing a complaint.
Really? That's not filing a complaint, even if I tag at FCC? No, I'm notorious for blasting companies. I've blasted Verizon Vios several times, and actually very proud because I blasted Spectrum about all the mail they were sending me to let them know they were now Spectrum, and I got off their mailing list, so that was successful. But Will, this was a real treat, unbelievably informative. Describe video is something that Ed and I are both big fans of, as well as the acts. And without the FCC, I don't think a lot of these set-top boxes would have ever become accessible, Ed.
No, I agree with you, and also the hard work of organizations like American Council of the Blind pushing these things, and National Federation of Blind, which has also been involved in some activities in these areas. This is what happens. We have a voice, and you get out there, advocate, file your complaints, and make things happen. Sitting home complaining and moaning and groaning doesn't get the job done.
Will, once again, thanks so much for doing this. We know it's great that we actually have a voice now at the office for the FCC, Ed.
Yes. Yeah. Will, thank you so much. Thank you for the great information, and thank for providing an outlet for people to file these complaints and get the ball rolling. I mean, it seems like we're making progress, and it's a start, and I can't help but think that with the FCC and having someone like you and having a department like this, that it's only going to get better.
Well, thank you guys for having me on your podcast. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to hear the next one. But you're totally right. People should contact our office, especially because everything I described, there's a lot of nuances in it. Call us up, ask for a follow-up question, see if this applies to you. And like Ed said, make your voice be heard.
You're listening to Brian and Ed on iAccessVO.
Ed, that was a ton of amazing information from Will at the FCC, and it's nice to have one of our own on the ground floor there.
Yeah, it's always good to be on there with another RPer. I know we all have blind visual impairments, but, RP is something that you're very familiar with it. I'm very familiar with it. And every now and then we get a guest on that lives it as well. So, but you know what? It's great, full of information. Great to have a voice, and I'm so happy he was able to tell people, how to contact the FCC and how to file their complaints. Yeah,
we discussed the small screen, so I guess now, Ed, it's time to discuss the big screen because we've got some new exciting things happening at the movie theater. Ed, you want to tell the listeners what we're hearing about AMC?
Well, what is it? AMC came to some kind of agreement to improve services for blind and visually impaired goers. I mean, I know we've had it for a while, but I think the issue has been a lot of people go to the movie theater, they ask for the audio description, and what they find are staff that are unfamiliar with what they're asking for, and also hardware that is not either properly connected or not properly maintained and not properly distributed.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. You know me. I am. I'll point things out, and I'm a little tad on the sarcastic side. So the fact that the fact that we even had to come to an agreement where AMC says, okay, we'll make sure the devices work. That's just silly to me. I mean, come on. I think it's great that the AMC is acknowledging this, but the fact that there has to be an agreement that, I don't know, I believe it was with the NFB that, okay, we'll make sure the devices work for the sad blind people. That's just sad.
Well, you know what? But here it goes back to, having a voice. And if you don't complain, and if enough of us don't say something, here is a situation where if they didn't do it, just the bad PR, bad press is something that could hurt them. So, sometimes you just have to step up, and you have to yell and shout to the rafters to get things done.
I believe in Twisted Sister's motto: "We're not going to take it anymore."
Whatever works.
Oh, yeah. But no, this is great. AMC, they're a huge theater chain in the United States. I don't know if they're overseas, but it'll be nice to just have employees that are familiar with described video and actually working technology to hear that described video.
Yeah. So now, in the same area of this here, this is something you had told me about that I did not know existed. You just mentioned you had NFB working to get this thing with AMC done. So now we have something from the ACB where they have the ADP list, 9th annual list of audio described awards. I didn't even know that they had done this before.
Yeah, this comes from our good friend Joel Schneider, part of the Audio Description Project. 9th annual, that's what shocked me. I was like, really? They've been giving out these awards for 9 years, and you could go to the ATV. It sounds like voting is open to everyone, because from what I read, you could go to the website, and we know deadline is June 2nd to, I guess, nominate somebody. But this is something we want to look into a little more, and like I said, 9th annual, where are they holding these awards? Because I joked when we had Will on, but I'm being dead serious. I could see a day where the Academy Awards, because we know how much they like giving out awards, has a category for best describer and everything. And
I think we need to start a petition for that.
The only problem was then these awards would go by the wayside, and that might annoy the people here.
Well, or these things will just grow enough and get adopted by it. That would be awesome.
It's great. It's the more media coverage we could present to stuff like this. I don't think it's just a nonsense award. Obviously, the media will cover it in some capacity, and the more media we could get covering events like this, I think the more we could get audio description to grow.
Yeah, all we have to do is bump some of the political news so we can get some actual signal out there to replace all that noise. You mean
we'd like to at least get this above the fake news?
Just get it out there for some real news. That's all.
How about we just start fake news? Brian Fischler won Best Described Video for I don't know, but anyway, you had sent me this next story. Catch up. Did you? I don't understand, man. England's always doing everything better than us.
Well, I don't know if they do everything better than us, but in this area, in the area of described video, they are way ahead of us by leaps and bounds. So, I don't know. It's going to take a lot. And after speaking to Will on, from the FCC, I mean, like he said, it could be something that could start tomorrow. It could take 20 years. So it's going to take us a while.
Yeah, I've heard of Sky TV in England, so I assume this Catch-Up TV is just another provider, because we read an article that all their programming is going to have described video, which blew me away. It's only it's a few amount of channels, but maybe some of our English listeners could pipe in here and let us know what Catch-Up TV really entitles. But this sounded pretty exciting to have. It was about 4 of the major networks in England, and to have everything described is just tremendous.
Right here we are struggling to get 4 hours of content a week, and they're gonna have 100%, which is amazing. So it's gonna take us a while to catch up TV.
I see what you did there, man.
You are sharp. You are sharp, my friend. That is why you are my co-host.
You know me. I'm always thinking about food, so I thought you said catch-up TV.
You want some ketchup on your Catch-Up TV? Okay.
I want ketchup on everything.
But, my friend, I do have to say congratulations to you.
For the Audio Description Award I just won?
No, not for that, but for the fact that you are now a certified vendor for the New York State Commission for the Blind and doing training in the New York City area for people right now that are sent to you from the commission to help them with their iOS, Mac training, and And I think we discussed you could probably do Victor Reader Stream training as well.
Yeah, I have to say thank you because, before I got this, I was just certified or certifiable. And now I'm certified for the New York State Commission. I've been doing private training for a while. And it's funny, I never thought I should mention this on the show that we do for blind people, because there may be some blind people outside of the New York area that do need training, which I do over the phone as well as in-person visits. So if you're looking for any iOS training, whether it's iPhone or iPad or Mac training, which more people are looking for, I have been using VoiceOver on the Mac since the 2008, 2009, and it's really come a long way. But just wanted to mention this, that I am doing training, and if you are interested in learning more about training, don't be shy. Feel free to email me at brianfischler@me.com. That is BrianFischler@me.com.
Yeah, that's great. And, like you said, you do some training over the phone, and that does work because, even in New York State, we do have counties in New York State that are north of the New York City area here that, services are few and far between. So anybody who needs services can contact you, and actually being you're vendorized for the entire state, they could actually mention you to their counselor as well and get referred to you.
Yeah. So once again, you are more fortunate to be in New York State because you could get the commission to pay for it. Where this is going back to that old Bookshare story. We did everything always goes back to that story. But if you're in New York State and you do have an open case with the Commission for the Blind, feel free to reach out to me. Once again, that email is brianfischler@me.com, and just let me know what your training needs may need. And even if you're outside the state of New York, I am flexible with my rates. They're only about $1 million an hour. Let me know and reach out to me, and we'll see what we can do to accommodate you.
Hey, you have some news about the contest?
Yeah, we're going to delay. We had such a great interview with Will this show that we didn't want to run too long and keep people saying, why is this show going to an hour and a half? We try and keep things to an hour or an hour and 10 minutes. And we're just, we didn't forget about you, your Eye Catcher awards. We've already picked the winners. We're just going to wait only 1 week, Ed, because we know we missed a week there. We're going to release back-to-back shows, aren't we, Ed?
Yes. This Friday, this show will drop.
This show will drop on the 26th, and then you'll have a show the following week, which will probably be in June.
Yeah, which will be June 2nd. So, so we'll have back-to-back shows. And the next show, you talk about being a trainer, is going to be one of your and my former students. So we'll be featuring him on the show. Just a little teaser.
Very exciting stuff for the following show that really blew us away and caught us quite off guard, didn't it?
Yes, it did, and it's very Apple oriented. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll talk about it later.
I guess for now, Ed, we are out.
You have been listening to iAccessVO. If you wish to get in contact with Brian or Ed at iAccessVO, call 732-660-8641 or visit our website, www.iAccessVO.com, or email us at iAccessVO@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at iAccessVO. This is iAccessVO, and I'm your producer, Patrick Lafayette. Thank you for listening.